Hi everyone, and thank you for watching my final reflection for this course. Throughout the semester, I have found myself drawn to the topic of human rights governance, especially how it relates to accountability in global governance. Human rights are closely related to the well-being of each of us, and the ultimate goal of all our struggles, governance, and efforts is to make human rights available to more people. As such, human rights are often described as aspirational ideas, but what I began to wonder was, can these ideas really shape in international behavior? Can powerful actors, whether states or individuals, really can be held accountable for human rights violations? I choose this topic not only because of its moral weight, but also because it reflects the complex relationship between sovereignty and justice. One of the core contradictions of global practice today. This reflection is my attempt to explore this question through what I have learned from class readings and especially from class debates. I have come to believe that our current systems is far from perfect and that there is much that needs to be improved. In the next few minutes, I will walk you through how my understanding of human rights governance has evolved. I will discuss my past beliefs, what this course has taught me, and how real-world examples and theoretical insights has changed and reshaped my views. Let's start with my thoughts before taking this course. Okay, at the start of this course, I didn't really believe that global human rights systems could do much. Honestly, I thought most of them were just symbolic. I used to think that state sovereignty always came first. The countries could pretty much do whatever they want inside their borders, and no international body can stop them. Human rights treaties and resolutions, they look nice on paper, but I don't think they have any teeth. And when I saw powerful countries like the US or Russia ignoring international rulings or avoiding accountability, it kind of confirmed that belief. I thought if most powerful players don't take this system seriously, then what's the point? Even institutions like the International Criminal Court or the UN Human Rights Council feel more like practical tools than real counts. I assumed they were mostly used by strong countries to pressure weaker ones. Without being held to the same standards themselves, looking back, I realized that I had a very realist view of international practice. I believe that power always won over principles, and that human rights law wasn't enforceable in any meaningful way. But as I dug deeper into the course, Connect, and the case studies, I started seeing a more complex picture. And that's what I'll talk about next. One thing that surprised me as the course went on was just how structured and layered the human rights system actually is. Before this, I thought global governance was kind of chaotic and idealistic. But then I learned about organizations like the UN Human Rights Council, the International Criminal Court, and the European Court of Human Rights. These aren't just discussion forums. They are real institutions with actual legal process, investigations, and even trials. They don't work perfectly, but they do represent a serious to turn moral ideas into legal action. They really shift my thinking. And the theory of constructivism helped me make sense of this. It suggests that norms like human rights aren't just formally forms. They grow over time, they get repeated, accepted, right into law, and slowly become expectations that countries have to respond to. So instead of seeing this system as completely ineffective, I start to see it as a kind of evolving framework. It's slow, it's messy, but it's more than just talk. These institutions create space for accountability to happen, not in every case, but in some. And that was a big shift in my perspective, especially when I looked at examples what just actually did happen. Let me show you two that stood up to me. The first time I really believed that human rights accountability could work was when I read about two specific cases. Slobodan Milosevic from Yugoslavia and Charles Taylor from Liberia. Milosevic was the president of Yugoslavia during 1990s. He was charged by an international tribunal for war crimes and crimes against humanity. And although he did before a final verdict, the fact that he was arrested and put on trial as a sitting head of state was a huge moment. It proved that even the most powerful can be held accountable. Taylor's case went even further. He was convicted by the special court for Sierra Leone for sporting brutal war crimes. In 2012, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. That's a former president actually serving time because of international law. Reading these stories made me pause. I realized that human rights law isn't always theoretical. Sometimes it leads to real consequences. And even if it takes years, and even if politics make it harder, these systems can work. Of course, there are just two examples. For every case like this, there are others what justice never comes. So next, I want to talk about where the systems still falls and why the matters just as much. As much as I was impressed by those cases, I couldn't ignore the fact that many powerful actors still avoid accountability. For example, the United States, China, and Russia are not part of the International Criminal Court. That means any crimes involving those countries or committed by them are basically outside the system. In the case of Serbia, for instance, there was enough evidence for prosecution, but Russia used its vote power in the UN Security Council to block action, so nothing moved forward. And even when rulings are made, enforcement is weak. Arrest warrants are ignored. Leaders stay in power. Victims never see justice. During our class debate, I defended the system. But after hearing my teammates' argument, I started to rethink my position. They point out how selective and polluting this process can be, and they were right. It made me realize that while the system has some big wins, it also has serious flaws. It's far from perfect, but maybe that's the reality of global governance. It's always a work in progress and always caught between idealism and power. When I looked back at how I started in week 1 compared to now, I can honestly see my thinking has changed a lot. At first, I didn't think international human rights laws really mattered. Then, during the debate preparation, I got really invested in proving that they do work, and I kind of swung in the other direction. But the turning point comes after the debate. When I really listened to what my teammates were saying, that reminded me that many trials don't get enforced. Some victims never see justice, and global powers often play by their own rules. They made me step back and take a more balanced view. I realized that the human rights system isn't completely broken, but it is also not fully working. It's complicated, and honestly, that's okay, because global justice is never going to be simple. What matters is that these systems exist at all, and that people are still trying to improve them. So I no longer see this topic as a yes or no issue. Instead, I now see human rights governance as a messy but meaningful process. It's full of flaws, but it's still one of the most hopeful things. So what's my final takeaway? I think the global human rights system is a kind of like a horse that's always under renovation. It leaks, it's unstable in some parts, but it still offers shelter, especially for people who have nowhere else to turn. It's not perfect. Some leaders still escape justice. Some countries still act with impunity. But these institutions, like the courts, the treaties, they create a shared idea of what's right and what's not. And that matters. Even when enforcement fails, it gives victims a language to demand justice. I've gone from being a skeptic to someone who sees both the fragility and the value of this system. And that's probably the biggest thing I've learned in this course. Global governance isn't about having all the answers, it's about building something better step by step. I know this isn't the last time I'll think about these questions. This course have changed how I see justice, power, and the role of institutions in shaping the world we live in. So this course didn't just teach me about power and justice, it helped me learn how to think more critically, more openly, and more globally. And honestly, I think that's the most valuable outcome of all. Thanks so much for listening to my reflection.